Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 Churchill Awards. Here is Churchill Club CEO, Karen Tucker.
Thank you so very much. Hello. Welcome to the 2019 Churchills. A little bit of background. When Churchill Club turned 25 back in 2010, it spurred us to reflect on our service. Good moment to do that at a quarter of a century milestone as an independent, nonprofit thought leadership platform. And we still saw the value of what we had been doing, igniting conversations to strengthen innovation, economic growth, and social good, addressing what's new, next, not widely known, around challenges and opportunities ahead, and always keeping in mind the needs and the interests of what we think of as the broader innovation community. And every flavor of that, from academia to enterprise to investors and startups and civil servants and so forth, all of us play a role in creating and adopting technology-enabled change. So we've tried to make sense of that over the years and always try to be just a little step ahead so that we're talking about things before they get over-discussed. So we asked ourselves back at this juncture, what is missing? And as it turned out, what we came to wasn't exactly something that was missing. It's just that it wasn't broadly talked about at that time. And that is the human and the leadership aspects of the business and technology world. So who out there could speak to us about how they looked squarely at the challenges, they pursued the opportunities, and did the right thing from the human perspective? So from there, we envisioned a different type of awards ceremony. We formed the Churchill Club Academy, a group of 700 that we hand-selected for diversity from all the different segments and roles and so forth, hoping to get a really balanced set of nominations and votes. And we asked them to do that and to vote for the best examples of leadership, collaboration, societal benefit, and innovation. But this awards program could not be about patting anyone on the back. Rather, it would be about sharing meaningful advice and stories with the express intention to inspire the rest of us to higher aims and to do the right thing ourselves. What that means in today's world, I don't think it's the same thing that it meant even 9 years ago. Innovation's given us greater challenges, it's given us new opportunities, and people are changing too, reflecting new experiences, insights, and perceptions that come from the shifting context that we're operating within. So tonight, we have an incredible group of accomplished, good-hearted people who are here to talk about what all of this means to them. We thank our wonderful sponsors who've made this occasion possible. First, our innovation champion, Shell, who has been with us since the beginning of this program, which is emblematic of our shared values. Shell has a growing office here in the Bay Area. They will hold their third Powering Progress Together event here next year. Big thanks also to Accenture, also with us since the beginning of this program and far before, our partner of many years that we appreciate and value greatly. And to TechCU for your contributions, also SiliconANGLE and theCUBE. Thank you so much. We're honored to work with all of you. Thank you. I also need to mention, this one time a year at least, that there is no more devoted and hardworking group than the Churchill Club staff, board, and volunteers. Without them, we would not be here, simple as that. Thanks to the team. Some of you may know that we have an artist in residence. Her name is Pamela Davis Kivelson. She has created works for this program. Pam is a multimedia artist, painter, and performer whose pioneering work with artificial intelligence has been incredibly exciting to see over the 5 years of her residency. Its iterative processes have given her a completely new way to challenge notions of portraiture. And she has historically been a portrait artist. There are some 40 paintings of hers that are hanging across the Stanford campus, for example. So she also has a background in understanding facial displays of emotions and empathy, and that goes into training the AI. So using styles, it can choose to show me or Rich Karlgaard up there, different arrangements of us. Even though it's all us, I could be an opalescent butterfly if I care about that, and that's part of my picture somehow. I could be also a cityscape. And so she's created these works for us. And if you can see them in motion, it kind of get a sense of that you're actually seeing shifts in the person that you're watching in these portraits. So we find it quite exciting, and we hope that you enjoy viewing them as well. Now, it's my pleasure and our great privilege to welcome our Master of Ceremonies, publisher at Forbes, best-selling author, founder of the Churchill Club, and someone we are very proud to call our friend, Rich Karlgaard.
Thank you, Karen. First of all, let's give one more big hand to Karen, who's just been fabulous. A great run of leadership with more years to come. For the past 8 years, this program has sought to honor those who have pushed us forward at times beyond our comfort zone to a place where we are better off. We've worked with the Academy, as Karen described, to identify paragons of excellence in any given year. Over the 8 years, this has brought us some incredible individuals and companies. People like Malala Yousafzai, the Mars Rover Curiosity team, the Amazon Echo team, Andy Grove, Mark Benioff, Elon Musk, and scores of others. In addition to these magisterial moments, we also discovered a darker side. Not often, but sometimes, our own judgment and quest for true leadership could be off course. We didn't always recognize that, and that the award is not always warranted. This turned out to be true when the Academy named Elizabeth Holmes as global benefactor. Alas, it was based more on a mirage and not reality. Now, why do I bring this up? Kind of a sour thing to say at an awards ceremony. Well, this summer I did a lot of business traveling internationally to Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Europe, and so forth, not to mention numerous trips around the United States. And I have to say I discovered a painful truth. Right now, Silicon Valley leadership is viewed by many parts of the US and the world as not always a good place, not always a paragon of excellence. This year, we seem to be at a new inflection point. You can't read the leading opinion writers and aggregators without seeing that. Now, we understand why this is true. It's because certain technology leaders and companies have not always done the right thing for their users, their employees, and their community. They pursued disruption for disruption's sake. They've blitzscaled solely to pump up valuation. They did this even as they allowed users to be put in harm's way. And so there's no better time than the present to show the world that there are many great leaders thriving right here in the cradle of digital technology, Silicon Valley. These are true leaders we honor tonight. They're setting a higher bar for themselves, their companies, their employees. They're doing the right thing for the community and society, and that's why we do celebrate them tonight. Now, as many of you know, this year marks the 34th anniversary of the Churchill Club. I was happy to say that our parents let Tony Perkins and I out of 5th grade to attend the first event that we started. And our first speaker in November 1985 was none other than Robert Noyce, the legendary co-inventor of the integrated circuit, the co-founder of Fairchild Semiconductor and Intel. Bob Noyce spoke to us in November 1985. Now, Bob was a model for leadership. He was smart, brave, supremely confident. He was also a model of ethical and moral leadership. I want to read you a couple of paragraphs about Bob Noyce's leadership style from the best story ever written on any Silicon Valley insider, and that is a piece by the great writer Tom Wolfe, better known for his famous books, The Right Stuff and The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test. And I just stopped there. you've really got a handle on America if you can write about fighter pilots and astronauts and acid-dropping hippies in 2 different books and bring it all together. Here's what Wolf wrote of Noyce, quote, "At Intel, Noyce insisted on ethical behavior in all dealings within the company and between companies. That was the word people used to describe his approach, ethical, that, and moral. Noyce was known as a very aggressive businessman, but he stopped short of cutting throats, and he never talked about revenge. He would not tolerate peccadillos such as little personal, I'll reimburse it on the Monday dips into the petty cash. No, Bob Noyce's strong style and stare could be mortifying as well as inspiring. Noyce managed to create an ethical universe within an inherently amoral setting, the American Business Corporation in the second half of the 20th century. At Intel, there was good and there was evil, and there was freedom and there was discipline. To an extraordinary degree, employees internalized these matters." And then finally, this, wrote Tom Wolfe, "At Intel, employees talk about the soul and spiritual vision as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a well-run company to be concerned about." Pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. So keep Wolf's words percolating as we hear from tonight's deserving Churchill Club Award winners. Let that spirit guide us in all our dealings. And now on to the show. 2 of our distinguished honorees tonight are exemplary for their personal and corporate leadership, collaboration, innovation, and truly making a difference to increase efficiency and productivity. Both honorees have changed the productivity game as well as excellent in team. Next, we welcome a game changer who's helped millions of people get fit and manage the stresses of work and life. I'm going to be paying particular attention to that one. For all of the extraordinary affluence and opportunity that exists in Silicon Valley, deep, persistent problems also inhabit here. One individual we honor tonight has worked tirelessly to battle the problems. He has rallied people and organizations to make real change. This individual has showed incredible leadership and selfless commitment to tackling the problems our region faces, including the economy and the health of our companies, the channel of communication with local and federal government, and other tough issues such as housing, traffic, and homelessness. Finally, we will present to you a true legendary leader whose actions have positively affected the lives of thousands of people as leader, mentor, inspirer, and encourager. His legacy of leadership will not only touch the people who are lucky enough to be near him professionally, but also the rest of us because of the example of integrity, leadership, and encouragement that shines from him. Each of our honorees tonight are here to share their visions and insights with the hope that it might inspire all of us. This is a night of conversations with some really accomplished, inspiring people, interviewing some other really accomplished, inspiring people. With that, I would like to introduce Nicola Marini Bianzino of Ernst & Young to introduce the first award winner of the night in the category of Game Changer / Life Changer. The animating spirit of this award is, you and your company changed how things are done or viewed, and there's no going back.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening. I always had this dream of having to open the envelope, but I guess you already know who the winner is. But anyway, it will be the next time. So I'm very honored to be here. It's the first time, I just joined the Churchill Club as a board members, but I've been in the audience for, I think, most of the 8 years, before this. And what I want to just a comment that I had is that, we are all very busy in our lives and we run from one meeting to the other, but these nights are a little bit special because I think they create kind of I would call it like a mindfulness moment where we can pause, look around, and get in touch with technology and innovation we don't see every day, right? And I think this is specifically the case for Peloton because it brings together 2 things that are passion of mine, which is one is sport and the other one is technology. So I just want to introduce Graham Stanton, is recipient of the Game Changer Award on behalf of Peloton, right? Peloton, for the few people I'm sure that don't know about them, it's a connected platform, right, for fitness, where you can really have, a very meaningful interaction with your personal trainer and sessions and class without actually leaving your house. So it's a combination of finding the right training and technology through technology, right, which is absolutely fantastic. So let me welcome Grant on stage, and congratulations for the award. And also let me introduce, Ray Wong, who's the founder and principal researcher of Constellation Research.
Very cool. That's good.
Yeah. There you go. Yes, we're right here in front.
Sorry.
I think that's yours.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Yep.
Keep that a little bit. Cool. All right. Let's jump in. Thanks, man. See you.
All right.
Oh, cool. Well, good evening, everybody. How you guys doing? So, who here in the audience has a Peloton? Raise your hands. All right. Who here in the audience wants a Peloton? There we go. Awesome. Well, this is really cool. Look, we've been following the company for quite some time, understanding how it works. You guys started when nobody was wanting to help you out, when nobody was like, people were like, what is this idea? Where are we headed? What are we doing? And you're one of 5 founders. Tell us about the founders and how they're all a little bit different, how they're the same, and why you're all committed to that same level of passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are 5 of us, and yeah, we're more different than the same, even if we're all about the same height. And it was John Foley's idea initially. He's our CEO, and he roped the rest of us into it. 4 of us: John, Tom Cortese, our COO and product visionary, and Hisao Kushi, our Chief Legal Officer, and I had all worked together in the past at IAC, and Yoni Feng, our CTO, was a very strongly attested referral from someone else we worked with, I think at least a few of us had this vague sense that we wanted to work together again someday in some hypothetical future. In the years pre-Peloton, we'd gone our separate ways a little bit, I actually first heard the idea from John when we bumped into each other at an e-commerce conference. It was an event for e-commerce leaders, and at the time when no one really wanted to talk about anything other than how do we survive in an Amazon-dominated world, and John was the celebrity invited guest as head of e-commerce for Barnes & Noble. Made sense that, of course, everyone wanted to know what it was like being on the front lines, and we were catching up. And he talked about that a little bit, and then after a while he said, but you know what I'm really excited about? I got this new idea. And that took me aback a little bit. I thought maybe he'd spring something on me. And then he said, okay, well, picture like a studio bike, and there's a screen on it, and you look through the screen and you're taking a class. And John had been a tech executive for a while, and this is not what I was expecting, but I loved it. I'd actually just started taking indoor cycling classes myself, and when I thought about some more, it made sense. John and his wife Jill had really gotten into it, and that's kind of all they would talk about. But I didn't get how special it was initially. I think it really had to grow over time, and I think that was the same for all of us. Tom came on board a couple months after he finished his Ironman, and he was ready to do something that maybe connected something there. And beyond being a product visionary, he's also the scrappiest person I know, and he opened the very first office. His house helped start the company, and Yoni came on to be the tech lead. And my involvement right at the beginning actually was I was one of the seed investors John reached out to. I think I was one of 2 or 3 people on the list for whom that small seed investment was a lot of money, and we really felt it. But I knew John was a force of nature, and I liked the idea, and this seemed like a good bet. And so when he asked me to come on board full time, I didn't hesitate. I said, yes, of course I'll move across the country and work for no money. This is a no-brainer. This idea is going to work. We're going to raise lots of money, and then it's going to be well-funded, and it'll work. And of course, I didn't foresee that we'd actually raise $0 from VC, and we'd almost run out of money many times, and it would be really hard. But at the time, it seemed like a sure thing.
This was 2012, right?
Yeah, this was mid-2012.
Mid-2012. Wow. Now, a lot of people describe you a lot of different things. I've heard media company, tech company, sports company, retail logistics. There's a lot of intersectionality here. So kind of explain what, in your world, what is the company and where is it headed?
Yeah, it's a lot. And we didn't initially set out that way, but it started to come together like that very quickly. And it's really because initially we wanted to create an experience. We knew these boutique fitness classes and kind of dark rooms with loud music worked really well. We enjoyed them. But there's something special about that experience that to recreate that in the home took lots of different pieces. So just one by one, we ruled out using a third-party bike. Because we said that, well, all the bikes that existed at that point were really designed for sweaty gyms, and people wouldn't want it in their living room. And then, well, we need this to be an immersive experience, so you can't. We were nervous about just putting your phone or a tablet on there, especially at the time. We needed something sweat-proof, and we wanted a big screen.
Those big screens didn't exist at that point in time.
They didn't. In fact, when we started calling suppliers, they thought we were crazy, saying we wanted a projective capacitive 21-inch screen. Thankfully, we found a couple people who were just starting to make them, but the applications weren't out there. So we just kind of had to create everything from scratch that way, and it got to the point where, as we were doing it, we had to make a decision on the content. Like, where do these classes come from? And we always thought, well, maybe we'd partner with one big studio, or maybe buy a small one, or and we realized that if people were taking these classes around the world, we needed the best instructors on the planet all in one place. And so that meant that we were opening an indoor cycling studio. And as I say all this, I'm starting to understand why all those VCs turned us down. But
this is the one in Chelsea, right? The studio that you guys have?
Yeah, but initially it was in the back of our office, and Tom went to Kmart and bought all black sheets, and he had to say that, no, it's not for my bachelor pad. Like, we're actually using these for something, and we kind of rigged it up. But we knew we had to open a real studio with cameras and streaming technology, which of course we also had to build, and it was a lot.
So the technology is not there. The manufacturing capacity is not there. The content's not there. Like, when did you decide Peloton was a game changer?
It took some time to really realize that, the question comes up, is Peloton, a game changer? Does it actually changed, things for the world, or for a large number of people? From the beginning, I know it would be a game changer for me personally, because I love the product. I love the product so much, I bought one on Kickstarter with my own money. Right back to the company had no money, so we didn't give out freebies to anybody, including the founders. And so, I loved it. Like, our friends loved it. It started to build up, and we said, okay, well, there are people out there who like this experience. It's a great experience, but it didn't start to click until this online community formed. And it got to the point where people actually traveled to New York City to take classes at the studio, but not just to take classes at the studio, but to meet each other. People they met through Peloton, and they did what they called home writer invasion, and they invaded our office. And that's grown into the homecoming event we did this last year, where over 3,000 people came to New York to see their instructors and also to see each other.
I mean, Vande, Robin, Jen, Nicole, these are all household names in the Peloton world. So it's been pretty crazy to watch that community light up. So now your role right now, you've had different roles in the company. You were doing analytics before, and now you're doing what space in this space?
Yeah, my role is business intelligence, and that grew out of the performance marketing team. So our initial marketing was I was sitting in the Facebook console, creating the ads myself and measuring everything. But our whole approach there kind of traces back to I said that we were running out of money. And that kept us really disciplined. That meant that everything we did had to work. And the failure was not an option. Inaction wasn't an option. We actually had to sell some bikes. We believed in the product. We believed we just had to get it out there. So we were very data driven about it. All our advertising right from the start, which actually gave us the confidence to start doing TV ads and run really brand-driven pieces or seemingly brand-driven advertisements early in our history, and actually in our first year of sales, because we had the data side to actually measure it and show that it would work and know that we're getting bang for the buck. And that was the origin of that.
So the data and the community and the technology all started coming together. That community piece is probably the strongest element of what you guys have. So talk more about the community. Like, how crazy are folks? How much are they fans? How much are they advocates?
Oh, people are fans. We have tattoos. Our instructors have become celebrities. It was kind of what we hoped for there, but we never took it for granted, and we viewed it as an honor that people viewed that would take Peloton to be such an important part of their lives, and we actually we kind of shifted the company. We made it very clear that our number one value when we come into work every day is members first. And it seems kind of trite and silly to say, but we have it in our indoctrination when people come and then they're onboarded as new employees. People are encouraged, and they do go to showrooms, meet prospective members, existing members, shadow support calls, even go for ride-alongs with our field ops delivery teams, just to see what that's all about. And because I think the real privilege we have in coming to work is that when Peloton does right by its members, Peloton does well. And many of us have had jobs in the past where the success of the customer and the success of the business were not necessarily at odds, but independent. And it's really nice when it's 100% aligned.
No, that's the kind of leadership we're looking for right now. I mean, companies are looking to, people and citizens and customers are looking for that kind of leadership where the customer comes first, people are responsible for their customers and the type of product. So that's very impressive. Let's give them a round of applause because we're missing out. So when you look back, I mean, that's a long 7 years, right? In a startup, like what are you going to remember most about Peloton? Not that you're leaving, not that you're going anywhere, just to take this moment in time to reflect on that journey.
Yeah. Well, when I look back today, I remember how much harder everything was than we thought it was going to be, every single step of the way, and that we persevered and made it through, and that it was all worth it. I don't just mean today. I mean it was, every milestone was its own reward, but we had to solve our own problems. And so that, at this point, I'd really love, I feel this like strong urge to go out and, speak to new founders and say, and give all sorts of advice. But one thing we learned was to take all advice with a grain of salt. And we realized even the well-meaning advice just didn't apply to us, and we had to solve it ourselves.
Wow, that's very, very powerful. So, okay. quick lightning round. Let's a little fun with this. All right, favorite instructors. You got a lot out there.
I,
You got some of the audience. Audience, what are your favorite instructors? Yell out.
Yeah, Ali is great. They're all great, and I really mean that just because I do take a lot of classes. And I take all of them.
All right, best workout class.
I like the ones that are really intense. So I like mostly because I like that they're kind of over with more quickly. So I like the interval classes, and that they feel longer, but I get into it. But actually, recently, my favorite has been our outdoor running classes, audio only, through Peloton Digital. They take me into work. It's my morning commute. I run into work. It's one of the advantages of living in New York City, and I've been enjoying them.
Wow, livable cities. So actually, related to that, favorite time to work out, and I'll ask you something we talked about earlier.
Definitely morning. That's what works out for me.
Okay, but you actually showed up to the hotel and did your own workout today. You said so a few hours ago.
I did. It was kind of like a re-wake up upon landing in the plane and getting ready for the evening. But yeah, I got on one of the bikes here, used Peloton Digital, and it all worked.
All right, favorite flavored ice cream.
If there's a really, really good vanilla, I'll go for that. Otherwise, I usually go for pistachio if it's available.
All right. Well, we're here with, thank you so much for being here, Graham. And please give me a round of applause for being a game changer in life. So
thank you, Ray.
Congratulations.
Yeah. 2 pieces.
Good to see you again. Well done. I've been eyeing one of those for a long time, and now I know what I'm getting for Christmas. You know, one of the things I heard in that, beyond the story of grit and courage and you know, always told in a new, fresh way, as it was told, was this idea of disruptive innovation. Because you think about when this company goes as a public company, it's going to be worth a fair amount of money. And you think at some of the leading brands, bicycle brands in the world, like Trek or Specialized down the road in Morgan Hill, or Calogno in Italy, or BMC, and you think about that could have been their opportunity. You know, that could have been their opportunity too, but they didn't see it because life to them looked like a high performance bicycle or a high performance mountain bike rather than really a whole new category. And so once again, you know, it's hard for incumbents to see opportunities that are right under their nose. Congratulations for seeing it and seizing it on it so well. The next segment is the game changer / work changer. In this case, the company has literally changed how we work. The spirit of this honor is, quote, "You changed how things are done or viewed, and there's no going back." Please welcome to the stage Ram Jambanathan of SAP.
Thank you, Rich, and hello, everyone. It's an honor to present this award on behalf of SAP. We are proud to be a decade-long sponsor of the Churchill Club. Not all products and services are created equal. Like, some are nice to haves, let's face it, and some have changed the world in such significant ways that we can't even remember what life was like before it. The winner of this year's Game Changer, Work Changer Award is one of these. It was called out by the Academy for, quote, fundamentally changing how teams communicate and how work gets done. When this company first went to market, there were no other products like theirs. And since then, we moved from a world of email and fragmented chat discussions to one of a continuous flow of information. This honoree's products are to previous collaboration tools, quite frankly, to what the iPod was to MP3 players. You build a product right, you can change the world. This company, I'm sure you'll agree, so deserving of the 2019 Game Changer Churchill Award in the category of work is Slack. Please welcome Alan Shim, CFO or Chief Financial Officer of Slack, together with his conversation partner, Ilya Fushman of Kleiner Perkins.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Just take the bowl off. All right, thank you.
Let's take the middle seat.
All right, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Exciting to be here with Alan. How many of you have used Slack today? All right, there you go. Awesome, we got some users. So Slack has clearly become a global phenomenon. It's been transformative to effectively all of our lives. Today, Slack has over 10 million daily active users, over 100,000 paying customers, 65 of the Fortune 100, used in more than 150 countries, 1,800 employees across 12 offices, and went public in June of this year. Slack actually holds a very special place in my heart. I first met you in 2015 when you were interviewing me for a job at Slack when I was leaving my previous job at Dropbox. Instead, I opted to go back to venture capital, but had the privilege of investing in Slack and being on the board and seeing the magic from the inside, and it was truly magic. I think beyond the impressive stats, Slack has been an innovator and game changer on the obviously product and how we work, but also on how companies are built with a strong focus on culture. And on how they capitalize and go public, and actually on fashion as well. These are Slack socks. Unfortunately, do not have mine. But what many of you probably don't know or maybe have heard is Slack is sort of a very long-term overnight success. The company started in 2009 as a gaming company called Tiny Speck, raised I think its first round of funding in 2010. And in August of 2013, decided to pivot to the collaboration product, which I think officially launched in February of 2014. And you joined in March of 14. So what were you thinking?
I don't know. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you to the Churchill Club, to all of you. Such an honor to be here. Really delighted and privileged to share our story with you. I also want to thank Peloton and some of our other customers, SAP, because a lot of the companies that you've recognized here are actually building their businesses on Slack, whether it's LinkedIn, Airbnb, as I mentioned, Peloton and SAP as well. So yeah, thank you. So we're very proud of what we're building in terms of how we think we can change what work looks like in the kind of the modern era. But to my story, as Ilya mentioned, there's a lot of consumer DNA that went into how this enterprise company was built. And I think what attracted me to this opportunity, so when I joined in March of 2014, it was a 20-person company. We're now approaching 2,000 people. And a lot of things have changed since then. But what hasn't changed is this focus on the customer, focus on building a delightful experience, and that if you build something that users will really appreciate and enjoy, especially in the enterprise, it's going to really surprise them, because I think it's very hard to find those delightful experiences today. But I think we also hit on something where the world has changed so fundamentally in terms of the pace of work, distributed workforces, the number of applications you use in your day-to-day life, and the fact that the tools to support that work really haven't changed. And we've really been in a very email-centric world for the last 2-3 decades. And so we think modern work deserves modern tools. And so we've had some success in a limited amount of time, but I'm really excited about what the future holds for us.
Cool. So Slack, not email, not just chat. Like, what is Slack?
Yeah, so for the unlucky few who haven't used Slack yet in the group, what I like to say what Slack is in a sentence is Slack replaces email inside your organization. But since we have more than a couple minutes here, I'm going to go through a little bit more detailed explanation of what Slack does. So I've been referencing email a lot because that really is the status quo in terms of how work, collaboration, communication is happening today. So if you know the framework of kind of the jobs of a product, Slack replaces sort of the 3 jobs of email today. First, it replaces communication inside your organization, right? How you communicate with your colleagues. Second, it replaces the way applications communicate with you as end users. So to think about the notifications that you get daily from your Concur app, your Workday app, ServiceNow app, whatever it may be. And then last, it replaces communication outside or between organizations. And I think that's important because we're leveraging a new way to, again, do modern work at a modern pace and provide this agility that organizations are looking for, and aligning organizations today in a world where speed is everything, alignment is everything. So we're leveraging for that first job, we're leveraging a capability called channels. This idea that you can have more transparent contextual communication in a fluid way on all of your devices. On the second job, around applications, most organizations are using hundreds of applications in their organization today, spending tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars on software alone. And Slack is able to bring those together and connect them into a more integrated experience. And then lastly, by providing the security, flexibility, agility of channels across Slack customers, we think there's a real opportunity to really transform work in a more profound way.
You have, and your mission is to make working life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. I think most companies, at least in this space historically, would have started at more productive and stopped at simpler. But you have the pleasant part. I love the little animation and the little notification you get when you boot up Slack. Talk a little bit about that and just the culture in the company and how this sort of playfulness and focus on delight permeates what you guys do.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between liking a product and loving a product, right? And I think you heard that from Peloton. And it creates and it evokes a different experience and just a different way that you experience it as a user, but it also allows you to do different things as a company. Because then if that's the bar, love, then you can invest behind that, and that will actually help facilitate more growth, especially in a kind of everyone is sharing everything, we're recommending everything. There's a kind of viral nature that exists and an opportunity that exists when you set the bar that high. And it also just keeps us very focused, because the only way that we think we measure our success is the amount of value we deliver for customers. So that's always been built into the company ethos. And something like a Slack really enables that, because we have channels where information, it just allows information to be shared more transparently. When people have questions about decisions that are made at the business level or at the product level, there's a much richer exchange of information and knowledge sharing between the junior product manager and our CEO. And I think that's really important. It's been important to have that flexibility and fluidity and agility as we've grown very quickly along the way.
Let's dive a little deeper into that. I mean, how do you think about your culture? How do you describe it? I remember being actually quite impressed how much focus there was on diversity and inclusion at Slack, even from the early days. What is the culture at Slack?
So probably the one word I would focus on is it's very human. We focus a lot on values like empathy, courtesy, solidarity, but also obviously we want to hire people who are smart, humble, hardworking. But the idea of empathy, I think, is particularly relevant, because I remember the first time I sent a ticket to somebody at Slack, a support ticket to somebody at Slack, and I got a response within a few minutes. And it wasn't just the fact that they responded so quickly. It was, hey, dear Alan, sorry you had this experience. We think that's very. We kind of empathize with you, and we want to make that better. So here's a way to address the issue that you had. And I'm used to a world where I've gotten support help from my cable provider or my cell phone provider, and we will just not name them because it's probably safer that way.
They might be here.
Yeah, well, that's like I said. So, and that's always been something that we just said, that's just part of working with a company. But the idea that you can create a different experience, a different connection with your customer I think has been really, really valuable for us. And not just obviously with our customers, but that's a core part of it, but also with fellow employees, and making sure that's just part of who we are, understanding, appreciating one another's humanity. And this, it's becoming more kind of in vogue these days, but I think it's always been part of who we are, making sure that people feel respected, valued in the organization.
You guys have always done things a little bit differently. You had an amazing animated movie for a marketing campaign. Beautiful.
Not one of my proudest moments, but yeah, sure.
We won't talk about the ultimate result of that marketing, but and you've combined a bottoms-up adoption, so this viral adoption of people with an amazing enterprise sales motion. You've obviously thought a little bit differently about going public. Kind of talk about some of these things, and how do you guys manage being different, but also aligning to this hyper growth that you're on?
When we started, we thought that Slack was going to be awesome for teams that look like us. So it's going to be the best product for companies of about 20 people. And what we found is that knowledge work is pretty universal, right? That this agility, this ability to be flexible and communicate and work with a team is not just for 20 people. It's actually for 20,000 people. Even our largest customers today tip over well over 100,000 people. And to me, it just shows that there has been this pent-up demand for how we need to evolve the way that we work and how the way that we collaborate with one another. I think as we've evolved that means we've got more of an enterprise, traditional enterprise sales motion, continue to sell to the largest companies in the world. You mentioned the Fortune 100, and we recently signed customers that are 40, 50,000 users, and they are 100 times bigger than we are, right? And so that's just a level of it keeps us on our toes, and it helps us keep thinking about the needs of organizations at that size and scale.
Got it. And so where does it go to from now? Like what's the future hold?
Well, we have over 10 million people using it daily, 100,000 customers. We think there are hundreds of millions of knowledge workers where this is relevant. I think for everyone here, Slack is going to be the type of product that you didn't know that you needed, but then once you really adopted it, and especially with your team, you've adopted it, it's something that you'll say you probably couldn't live without. I know I feel that way, but I think you feel like I'm pretty biased. So I'd rather point to the way our customers talk about it. And that's, I think, the sign of that we've hit on something really valuable there. I think at this point, it's making that more valuable. So once people have truly adopted this new way of working, we can make that experience a lot richer. We're a 5.5-year-old business, and in the business, and kind of in business terms, that's still really, really young. So I think I'm super excited about what the future holds over the next 5 years, particularly as we build out a more robust platform, application ecosystem, and really start to enable work across organizations, which I think is really exciting.
Now you're one of the, I think, very few public company CFOs who's started the company and grew up with it. So talk a little bit about that journey and really just the evolution of the team and how you've managed that, because I think you guys really managed it very well in balancing the team that's there and bringing on the right kind of talent.
Well, we only have a few minutes, so I'll give you the short version. I think I feel especially lucky to have this opportunity to be with this great group of people, to work on a product in a market like this. But probably, the reality of scaling a company, those principles, if you will, are equally relevant to the individuals who are working in that. So always thinking about where you're going versus where you are, and the skills that you need to be successful at 5, 10x scale, and preparing for that, building for that, has been probably the thing I would say about how we thought about growing Slack as much as I thought about growing myself. So managing a team of hundreds was something that I knew I had to start getting ready for. So what does that mean? That means I have to evolve from being a manager of, individual manager, but I have to be thinking about setting the vision, setting the mission for a much larger group of people. Actually sharing that vision with an audience like this. How can I develop in the way that narrative is a lot tighter and a lot crisper? So we're talking about this for me, but it's equally relevant for how we talk about it for the company, making sure that the millions and millions of people that we believe are potential customers of Slack, how can we make that narrative a lot clearer so that this new thing that we're trying to bring into the world can be a lot more easily understood and appreciated.
Awesome. 2 last questions for you. One, what's your favorite emoji?
We have an emoji. We talk about this year being the year of execution for the organization. Every year is a year of execution, but this one in particular. We just went through a public offering, which we mentioned, and execution was very top of mind for me. But to really emphasize that and the urgency, I've been very fond of an emoji that just says "Let's go." And so every time I'm in different channels, I'm reacting, "Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go," to the point where our bankers made a T-shirt with my face and a speech bubble that said "Let's go." So I think I'm being consistent.
All right. Last question. Tell us something you will not forget about Slack.
Oh man. There are so many things. Obviously, going public is most probably recent top of mind. We took it down a different process than your traditional IPO process. We went through what is just called a direct listing, and without getting to all the reasons and the technicalities there, I think it was such a proud moment for me because there were so many things that led up to it. Months, quarters of work that the team put in, nights, weekends, and direct listing is one of those things where you don't exactly know what's going to happen. It's unfortunately one of the byproducts of the process. So I'm sitting there on the Morgan Stanley trading floor and waiting for this thing to open, just have no idea, no control at that point because it's not a preset allocation. But when it opened and everything went, there were no issues and things seemed to be a success. I was just so proud of the team because we had done something really almost never been done before, and because we all had come together, we're focused and kind of had that shared purpose and alignment, we got it done.
It was an epic moment. Yeah. Congrats.
Cool. Thank you.
Let's go.
All right. Thank you.
Well, you can add Forbes to the list of happy Slack users. I couldn't help but thinking what was going through John Thompson's head as he was watching this. Is this a threat to the Office franchise, or did they stick their camel's nose under the tent or not? But it'll be interesting to watch as the years develop, and congratulations on a really great success in an important category. Next up is the Magical Team Award. The spirit of this honor is your team nailed it. Please welcome Boris Schubert of Shell New Energies to introduce.
Thank you, Rich. Well, what an honor and how exciting to be here tonight and to introduce the Magical Team Award on behalf of Shell. Every so often, extraordinary people come together and take together the world by storm. Individual focus is put to the side for the greater good, and that helps the team to further solidify their strength. When you think about collaboration and the greater good, that really resonates with my colleagues and me from Shell. Based on the core values of honesty, integrity, and respect for people, we are working to meet the world's growing needs for more and cleaner energy solutions in a way that are economically, environmentally, and socially responsible. This is a tall order, and we know we cannot do this on our own. So we will only succeed by working collaboratively with customers, governments, business partners, investors, and all the other stakeholders. This year's Magical Team delivered an easy-to-use business solution with accessible pricing and innovative features to connect a growing population around the world. It has become so pervasive that its name has already become a verb. In March 2019, this Magical Team honoree went public on the NASDAQ and was valued just under 16 billion by the end of its IPO.
I'm pleased to present the 2019 Magical Team Awards goes to Zoom. Let's welcome Magical Team members from Zoom. We have Odette Gall and Priscilla Barolo, and they will be joined on stage for a conversation with Santi Subotovsky from Emergent Capital.
Can I grab one of these? Thank you. Told me to take the middle seat. So I'll do that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Santi Subotovsky, and I'm a proud user of Zoom. And I'm here with Priscilla Barolo, Head of Communications, and Odette Gall, Chief Product Officer. So these are the people that make things happen. And a little story before we get into Zoom. So how did I come across Zoom? My accent is not fake. I'm not trying to fit into the diversity quota. I'm from Argentina, and I still have friends and family in Argentina. So when I moved here to California, I wanted to stay in touch with friends and family. And being Latino, for me, that connection mattered. I tried every tool out there. I mean, you name it, I tried it. And then back in 2013, before it was obvious, I came across this small thing that nobody knew about called Zoom. And I started chatting with my friends and having video calls. And it allowed me to stay in touch and create that emotional connection. And after I started having a few Zoom calls with people in Argentina, I started getting invites from people that I didn't even know from Argentina to have Zoom calls. So that's when I realized the product not only works, but people love it and it's spreading virally. And that's when I reached out to Eric, the founder of Zoom, and we started building a relationship and friendship. And back in 2013 or 2014, I remember visiting in your office, old Ironsides Drive.
Yeah.
You probably remember that office.
Right,
Yeah, and I remember Eric waiting for me downstairs. And it's like, oh, this is nice that Eric is waiting for me downstairs. It's like, no, the elevator doesn't work, so I need to walk through the back door. And a lot of that hasn't changed. I mean, Priscilla, you were there back then.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, again, same question that was asked before. What did you see back then? How did the team operate when it was a small team with a camera on top of a refrigerator, boxes all around, elevator not working? So what are the things that you saw back then that are still present today and make Zoom so special?
Sure. So I got to Zoom about 1 month after we had GA of Zoom 1.0. So there were about 10 guys, all guys, in 2 rooms. And I wish I could actually say I saw, everything that Zoom was going to be, but I just lucked out basically. But I think from the beginning, there was a relentless, obsessive focus on customer happiness and taking care of customers. I remember one of our first big deals, a customer had been working for 3 years with one of our competitors trying to get a feature built. And we built it in 3 weeks, not months, weeks. And that was just a matter of will, and we just have to do this. And Eric would email every customer that churned and said, "What can I do? How can we get you back?" And it continues to this day. I know, I don't think there's an upmarket customer that doesn't know Eric or Odette personally and has had a meeting with them or says, "Oh, I got this T-shirt from Eric." Yeah. So, and then it continues because we care and we hire people who care. And then where I think we've transitioned over the past couple of years is adding to that a focus on employee happiness. And not just perks, but how do we put these programs and these people in place to take care of our employees and help them grow their careers? I think that's hard to do when you're a 50-person company and you're just trying not to get eaten by your competitor. But I think as you get into sort of thrive mode where we are, you have to pivot. And Zoom's done a really good job of pivoting and focusing on that and keeping that customer happiness, that employee happiness front and center.
Yeah, I remember that story where Eric was emailing customers and customers felt, oh, that's not Eric. That's someone else using Eric's account.
You're lying. And then he said, "I'll have a meeting with you." And they said, "No."
Yeah, and even today, Eric emails customers and he has video calls with them. He's there all the time. And Odette, I remember the first meeting you and I had back in the days as well. You were coming from the dark side, another company that I'm not going to mention, but I'm wearing this pants. probably people can figure out the name. What did you see in Zoom? I mean, you've been in this video conferencing space, video first collaboration for a long time. And you knew Eric from the WebEx days, but you were working at another company. So what did you see in what Eric was building that made you decide this is the right approach?
Yes, so you're right. Eric and I worked at WebEx, and early on, WebEx was the best product of its kind. And over time, for multiple reasons, the product stayed behind. And both Eric and myself, we found ourselves talking to customers and explaining why they can't get what they're asking for, and kind of trying to come up with excuses on why it's not the quality that they're asking for. And when I met with Eric, he said, "Do you remember those days?" And he told me, "I promised myself that I will never be in that situation again, ever. And that's why I'm building Zoom, and I want you to join and help me do that." And that kind of made the difference.
It's a good decision.
Yeah.
Like that. And tell us a little bit about how you are thinking of the product, because initially it was video conferencing, and now people are getting a lot more done. And last year you announced some great products. I'm a big fan. I use them all the time. When people ask me, "Where's your office?" I tell them it's on Zoom. I mean, that's my office. So tell us a little bit about how those products come together and how do those products help deliver a better experience to our customers.
Yeah, I think the essence of our success is actually the technical aspect of the product. And in addition to the culture and everything that we will talk about, the core thing is really having the engineering team that is very experienced, that sat down for 2 years and built this infrastructure that is so scalable and so expandable that you can build on top of it without worrying on going back and fixing things that are not working. So because the product works, you can add to it more and more functionality and more services.
Just works.
Yes, that's like the core of it. Because it just works, you can actually run fast and innovate. And that's like, we're fortunate to have those that team of engineers that have built that infrastructure and knew what they're doing from day one.
Yeah. And you guys talk a lot about trust and how this video first collaboration enables you to build trust. And I can totally relate to that, because when I'm having a conversation, if people are on the phone, you know that they're doing something else. You know that they're either watching their kids, petting their dogs, reading email, or just like running around. Sometimes it's like, "Oh, what's your opinion?" And you hear like, "Tak, tak, 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 tak. What? Can you repeat the question?" And you know that you're not paying attention. Yeah. This video first technology makes a huge difference. Can you share a few examples of how you guys are using it internally and how you think that that's evangelizing and spreading the word that now you can have collaboration and you can have calls on Zoom that are as good as in person, if not better?
Yeah, I mean, I think we live on Zoom. So if I'm not in a Zoom room, then I'm on Zoom chat. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's seeing someone face to face, looking them in the eye, keeping everyone focused, building that relationship, building that trust. And like for example, this year we had to build a whole new set of relationships with first our bankers, then our investors and financial press. And so we did the entire process of our IPO on Zoom, from the bake off to the roadshow to the earnings calls, and we continue to do it. And I think it's really important when you're looking someone in the eye and telling them about your business that Zoom is a real advantage in that.
Yeah, I have another example. What we actually do is sometimes a customer asks us to come and present the product in their offices. Mm-hmm. And we just don't come with a laptop. We come with a suitcase with a Zoom room, our conference room solution. And one time, I came into a customer, I won't say the name, but it came like 15 minutes before the meeting. I built it myself with just my own hands. After 10 minutes, it was up and running. And we had the whole conversation with Eric coming remotely on that Zoom room in that office. And I remember the CIO talking to us and saying, "Hey, we are trying to fix a product from a competitor for 3 months, and it's not working. And you come, and just in 10 minutes, it's working better than that other product." Yeah. So that's like
That's
a great example.
Yeah, and I mean, you shouldn't feel that great about it. I saw a video of like 6-year-old kids putting a Zoom
That's
room
true.
together.
10
So
minutes is nothing. That's true.
if they can do it, but yeah, it's a magical experience. And something else that I saw over the last few years at Zoom is that you hire people who are different. You don't hire the typical profile that we see in other Silicon Valley companies. You bring in people, you mentor them, and people grow with the company. You guys have been there since the early days, so from a few dozen people to over 2,000, and you're running the company. What do you look for when you hire people? What does Eric look for when he hires people?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was thinking the other day, we had that IPO party with, and Peter Gassner, the CEO of Viva, was there, and he said, "You are who you hire."
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. I think hiring and building our teams is probably the most important thing that either Odette or I do on a day-to-day basis. And I know personally, we look a lot for self-motivated individuals. So I'll be, what was the last book you read? When was the last time you had to figure something out with, no net and no experience? Or how do you improve yourself? Because frankly, that's a lot more relevant to me than where you got your MBA 5 years ago, because our industry is constantly changing, our tech is changing, best practices are changing. So I need to know that you can keep up and figure it out. That's what's really important to me.
Yeah, the motivation, the passion for a product, especially if you're a product manager, you have to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And we try to understand whether or not you have it or you don't.
What are some of the key questions that you ask candidates?
I think early on I was asking, did you use the product?
Yeah.
Now it's harder because everybody's using it. And then I would if they use it and to what level before they come to the interview.
Yeah, so maybe we should poll the audience, and maybe we can reverse it. And instead of saying who has used Zoom, raise your hand if you haven't used Zoom. I mean, we need new customers. So there's one there. Can someone take notes?
It's free, so try it.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about Eric. I mean, you are who you hire, and Eric started this company, and people love him. People love Eric. He works incredibly hard. I sometimes message him at 11 p.m. or 4 a.m., and I get a response right away. And I know it's not a bot. Sometimes there are spelling mistakes in his responses. But I mean, how does he run the company? What's the culture that he built there?
Well, we just renovated the 6th floor. And
Finally.
And so Eric, he doesn't have an office. He has 2 cubicles. One cubicle is with the product team. The other cubicle is with the engineering team. That's it. And if you ask him, why don't you have an office? Why do you sit with those teams? He will tell you, we need to make fast decisions. We have to be fast and move fast. And that's how he does it. That's kind of a testament to his character.
Yeah, I think culture starts at the top and it starts at the beginning, right? And so it's really inextricably tied to him. And so this culture of caring and collaboration, this all comes from his spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was talking to Aparna, our general counsel, and she was saying that Eric doesn't see people. I mean, he doesn't see color. He doesn't see a female, male, red, blue. He just looks at what you're going to build and how much you care. And that's unique. I mean, the diversity at the executive team level and the entire company, it's off the charts. And I don't think it's by design. I don't think Eric was like playing the numbers. It's just that he's looking for great people, and you can find great people everywhere. Yeah. Tell us funny story or memorable moments of your journey at Zoom.
Well, it's funny today, our head of corporate strategy was reminding us in all hands about how when we started, we'd have to go, okay, it's Z as in zebra, O, M as in Mary, and just try to spell out our name. And so it was kind of reminding me, because then I was thinking, well, I did the IPO, we did 16 interviews. I have to spell our name for anyone. But I think for me, it's more.
At least your last name is not, it's not Subotovsky.
Yeah.
When I'm on the phone, it's like S-U-B-O, B as in boy, B as in big.
People struggle with Corolla. But so I think for me, though, it's more customer focused. Like I went to a customer offsite earlier this year, and the gal said to me, I almost quit my job. I was this close. I was just, getting angry tickets from end users all the time. And I didn't know what to do. And then they switched to Zoom and the situation changed. And she said, I can keep my job. And it was like, that's not world changing, save anyone's life. But for her, she was like welling up as she was talking to me. And I think that for me is more, I'll remember that longer than any kind of these big exciting events this year.
Yeah. I think for me as a product guy, this moment happened 3 years ago when the Samsung team came to our offices and they said, hey, we want to demonstrate your product in the keynote for Galaxy Note 8. And they say it's happening in New York. We said, okay, we need to change a few things in the product so that it works well. And they went away and they're gone. I used to, send people to a demo and 10 people, sitting outside waiting. We didn't hear from them. And then we got an email after the demo itself. It all worked. It was fine. And they sent us a YouTube video seeing the demo actually working so well that we were amazed. And
it was probably those 6-year-old kids setting it up.
But that was the moment when I felt people really trust us.
Yeah.
And that was kind of click. That was the moment for me.
And do you feel that the way you operate has changed early on when we started working together? You were working with a lot of smaller companies, and now big companies like Walmart, HSBC, they're deploying Zoom and it's becoming part of their fabric. Has that affected the way you think about the product?
I think we're trying not to, and actually that's the feedback we get from those customers is they like it. They like that we treat them the same way as if we are a small startup.
Yeah.
And they appreciate it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's the end user experience that matters. And then you have the security layer and everything else that the bigger companies need. But the end user needs to be happy.
Yeah.
Favorite Zoom feature?
For me, it's the touch up your face.
I was going to say, I never
Touch
turn that off.
Well, you can, sometimes in the morning when I don't shave, I just, use that feature. I recommend everyone. It's kind of a hidden feature.
Just softens up everything a little bit. And I like virtual background. I think you can do something fun with it, or you can be like, oh, here's your customer's logo or something. It could be a good feature.
Yeah, and you can hide your kids running around. Yeah, that's what I use it for. So Priscilla and Odette, thank you very much for building a great product with a magical team. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that illuminating presentation. I can tell you as someone who's done about 3 dozen podcasts over the last few months surrounding a book I released last spring, the go-to podcaster format was Zoom. So the hardcore in that space really love you. Now we move from 3 really inspiring companies to a pair of inspiring individuals. The next segment is the local benefactor. The spirit of this award is thanks for thinking big. Please welcome Janaki Clem of Tech CU to introduce.
Thank you so much, Rich. And I truly am honored to be able to do this today to introduce our 2019 Local Benefactor Award on behalf of Technology Credit Union. This distinction is for irrepressible vision and positive impact on society. So in reviewing our honorees' accomplishments for this introduction, it seemed almost impossible that one person could be doing all of this. From leading the Silicon Valley Leadership Group for 25 years, to raising millions for local charities, to fighting for affordable housing and transportation initiatives, and so much more. I know that this person approaches his work with an attitude of service, or true servant leadership. Sometimes servant leaders face multiple challenges where they must give of themselves over and over again, so many times that people begin to take their service for granted. Because of this, it is especially fitting to recognize him with this well-earned and very deserving award for his decades of leadership in the face of a myriad of challenges. I am proud to say, along with our honoree, Technology Credit Union cares deeply about creating the best educational opportunities for all in our innovation economy, growing our local talent to join our companies and remain in our community. We too spend a large portion of our time, treasure, and talent to help ensure that all have the ability to wholly participate in our local economy, from jobs to housing to the ability to get where we need to go. It is my privilege to welcome, with great admiration and appreciation, my friend, the 2019 Local Benefactor honoree and superstar, Carl Gardino. Together with his conversation partner, San Jose's Mayor, Sam Liccardo. Congratulations. Thank you.
Oh, photo op here. All right, here we go. Well, it's great to be here this evening. Thank you, everyone, for having us. Carl, let's get right down to talking about you. In the many years in which you have served as a leader here in Silicon Valley, you have met great leaders throughout the world, throughout the country. Of all your big city mayors in this country, who's your favorite? No. We don't have to answer that. So, Carl, you have become synonymous. Your name has become with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, but it wasn't always that way. Many people might be surprised to know you actually did not found the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. You want to tell us the origin story about how the organization started?
Absolutely. And first of all, I want to thank the Churchill Club and Karen Tucker and her team for putting on tonight and for, in my case, lowering your standards to present me with this award. It's truly an honor to be here and to think that I get to share the stage with leaders of great companies like Slack and Peloton and Zoom, and someone who I've admired as a mentor for years, John Thompson, who's coming up next with another mentor, Steve Lusso, who was smart enough to duck out while I'm on stage. So we'll get Steve for that when he comes back. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group was created by the legendary leader, David Packard, who pulled together Bob Noyce and Jerry Sanders and 30 other Valley visionaries at the old Ricky's Hyatt on El Camino Real in Palo Alto and said, hey, we're fierce competitors in the marketplace, but when it comes to building a better future for our economy, our employees and their families, and the broader communities in which we operate, we have a lot more in common than we ever have that divides us. So let's unite around those issues where we have common ground. And at the leadership group, my main role is not to mess up David Packard's vision, but also to carry out what we call the 95-5 principle. And that is no matter how complex some of the challenges we face as a region, state, and nation, when you peel everything away, we probably agree on the solutions about 95% of the time. We stridently disagree about 5%. And a lot of the problem is we get so fixated on the 5% where we're never going to agree that we forget that we could be making wonderful progress for our region, state, and nation if we just focus on the 95%. And that's what we try to do. So it was David Packard's vision that brought us all together.
And you have led that organization amazingly as CEO for so many years. Why don't you just tell us how you got involved with SVLG? How'd you land there?
Yeah, I was so impressed by David Packard, and I was able to work there for a period of time for Lou Platt when he was CEO. And what a great mentor he was. One of my most prized possessions is an email he sent me when I departed, thanking me for some work that we had done together and that he had entrusted to me. And I will never forget that. It's framed in my office as one of those prized possessions. But for me, what was so appealing about the leadership group was something that David Packard said when he was a relatively young CEO. He was giving a speech to a group of older CEOs on post-wartime production. And he stood in front of those colleagues, I think it was 1948, and he said, our responsibility as CEOs is as much to our employees, their families, the communities in which we do business, and our customers as it is to our shareholders. And he was able to strike that balanced scale. You can't help anyone if you go out of business, so you have to be responsible to your shareholders, but those stakeholders include customers, employees, family, and community. I thought it was pretty cool when Jamie Dimon, who I greatly admire, of JP Morgan Chase and the US Business Roundtable, came out about 2 weeks ago with a similar statement. And I thought, yeah, 71 years ago, that was David Packard's philosophy and the philosophy around which he built the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. And that drew me like a fly to a flame to be a part of that.
Now, we're going to talk about your work with SVLG in a minute, but you're also well known for being associated with, of all things, a turkey trot. And if any of you are among the 26,000 who are wearing running shoes, thank you, on Thanksgiving morning and you're in downtown San Jose, maybe you're wearing a turkey outfit, or maybe you're forced to wear a turkey outfit because you happen to be mayor that day. You know something about the turkey trot, which has raised now more than $8 million for charities serving needy families in Silicon Valley. How did you and I believe your wife, Leslie, come up with that idea?
You know, it's funny. In life, we meet two kinds of people, right? We meet talkers and takers, and we meet doers and donors. And it was Thanksgiving morning, 2004. The alarm went off. KCBS radio came on, and the announcer was talking about 20,000 people downtown running and walking to help support the hungry. But here's the kicker. He wasn't talking about rich Silicon Valley. He was talking about Sacramento in their run to feed the hungry. And I turned to my wife and said, you know, somebody ought to do that here. And she gave me that famous Leslie look that said, well, maybe that ought to be you, fella. And so we reached out to our friends at Applied Materials and just some visionary leaders there who care deeply about the community, and they believed in the vision. And so we had 1 year to put together a race. We'd been marathoners and Ironman triathletes for years, but that was the talker and taker part. We'd never been on the doer and donor side. And they trusted us. A year later, before that first 2005 race, 10 days before race day, we had 100 people sign up. We had 300 volunteers to support 100 runners. Now that is customer service. 3 people running beside you. Would you like a goo? Here's your Gatorade. Can I wipe your brow? Scared to death that we were going to fall on our face. But fortunately, those last 10 days in race morning, we ended up with 1,900 people in the inaugural year. We were able to give away $132,000 to some wonderful nonprofits that help needy families. And we went from 1,900 to 3,200 to 6,200. The last 6 years in a row, we have been the largest timed Thanksgiving Day run in the world.
Not bad, not bad. In the universe, some would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the galaxy. But we don't want to be the largest. We want to be the most generous. And so, yes, we're able to donate about $1 million a year now to people in this region, hundreds of thousands of folks who are not nearly as blessed as each of us here, with the basics around housing and food and healthcare. Through 5 great nonprofit beneficiaries. And, you know, could I made some calls and raised $1 million a year from really generous people in this valley and give it to those charities? Yes, but that doesn't build community. And the whole point of the Turkey Trot and our Santa Run Silicon Valley and our Heart and Soul Salad Bars for Schools run that our foundation owns and directs all 3 is, yeah, let's help people in need, but let's do it by building community. And when you have 25,000 people in downtown San Jose on race day, on Thanksgiving morning, a day of thanks, you just get goosebumps.
I'm glad you told me it's about building community, because I thought that Heart and Souls Run was about getting me into a giant asparagus suit, which is what he did about 3 years ago. But you mentioned housing. You founded an organization called the Silicon Valley Housing Trust more than 2 decades ago. That housing trust has leveraged more than $250 million, helped more than 25,000 families find a home in this valley. We all know we've got a housing crisis. Imagine how much worse it would be without the housing trust. How did that come to be?
Yeah, that's through crisis you find opportunity, right? We started looking into how do we address the housing crisis, and we found out at that time there were 275 communities across our country that had housing trusts, and they were all funded through taxes and fees. And we weren't against that concept, but we polled, and our community, even though there was a housing crisis, didn't want to pay a new tax or a new fee to fund those housing solutions. And so we tried it through voluntary contributions. And there's the next contribution.
We got a donor.
Yeah. And it was kind of fascinating too, because we gave ourselves 24 months to raise the initial $20 million. And the doubters amongst us, I remember someone coming in and saying, $20 million sounds like 2 homes in Los Altos Hills. And probably right. But it was a leverage model. And the leverage model of a third, people who are homeless or at risk of becoming so, people who need just a decent, affordable rental home, and first-time home buyers. Everyone from people who work in our companies to school teachers and others that are just so important to our society. So that was the spectrum of need that our housing trust is going to try to meet. And we had 24 months to raise $20 million. 12 months into the 24 months, the dot-com boom busted. We kept our heads down and knew there were a lot of generous folks in this valley. And 24 months later, August 1st, 2001, we did not achieve 20 million. We achieved 20.6 million. The original goal was 20 million would leverage 200 million, and we'd be able to help 4,800 families. To date, our housing trust has been able to secure 250 million in voluntary contributions, leveraging 2.3 billion in private development, and helping 27,000 families afford this high-cost valley.
That's right. Huh?
We had to be willing to fail, not at an executive level, because our executives totally got it, bought in and contributed. But we had someone at a member company at a non-executive level, and this will inspire you. John Thompson, tell me if you can relate to this. She said, this is going to be known as the greatest failure in the history of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
Oh, geez.
Which made me think, well, what were the other failures that you're referring to? But you know that you can be motivated by folks who are cheering you on and pushing you forward, and you can be motivated by people who are trying to push you down, and let both of them motivate you.
Truly,
yeah,
truly. So we're going to return to your work in a moment, but it's okay to applaud. But I want to talk about you as a person for a moment. One of the things I admire so greatly about you is how devoted you are as a parent, and you have 3 beautiful children. Jessica, Sienna, and Jake. 2 of those children are adopted. And you and Leslie made that decision, even though I'm pretty sure you're both pretty busy people. And for those who don't know, they're both triathletes. And if you haven't gotten an email from either one of them at 4 in the morning, then let me tell you, they're both very busy people who work lots of hours. But you committed yourself to raising a family, and you are passionate about being there for your kids. Tell us about where that comes from, your commitment to your parenthood.
Yeah. You know, in life, sometimes you have a choice between being bitter or better. Our first daughter just started high school. She was born the old-fashioned way, 2 folks who were married and were really attracted to each other, and that's Jessica. And several years later, we were expecting a son and went in for a routine ultrasound, and the doctor came in and said, your son Emmanuel has numerous and severe abnormalities with a condition called trisomy 18, and would only survive a day or two outside of the womb. And that was February 7th, 2008, by far the toughest day so far of our lives. And we lost Emmanuel. And so we had a choice to make. You know, and sometimes in our faith, if God closes a door, you build a new door. And we decided we wanted to add to our family. So Leslie got to work in that amazing way she does, and went on YouTube and I think at the time MySpace and all kinds of stuff, and started advertising. And I was giving a speech for City Year, a great organization that Tony Burke and others helped launch here in San Jose. And my chest started to vibrate, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack during a speech. And it was my phone vibrating in my pocket. I came off stage, and Leslie said, there's a really brave teenage girl in high school in a small town in Utah who said if we can fly out tomorrow, the baby that was just born a couple hours ago might be ours. So we had a race in the morning, a triathlon, so we raced and then went to the airport and walked into a hospital room.
That part is true, by the way. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and we had like 20 minutes to name this new child, and we'd just gotten back from a cycling trip in the Tuscan Hills, and so we picked the name Sienna. She's lucky that we weren't in Budapest at the time, or it wouldn't be quite as good of a name. But Sienna, we would have never had the opportunity to have that baby at 1 day old. And then Jake, we heard a presentation on foster children and the plight of way too many foster kids in our nation and the outcomes, which are tragic. Great kids who life has dealt some really hard blows. And so we had an opportunity during our 2016 Measure V traffic relief campaign to foster adopt a little guy at 3 months old. Jacob Zachary, Jake to his friends. He turned 3 last week, and Mayor San Jose is his godfather. But he's not the kind of godfather who's going to put a horse's head in his bed, so it's pretty sad.
Sicilian, but
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, you build family. You build family in all that we do, and we built family through traditional ways, adoption and foster adoption. And I haven't told Leslie yet, but I'm going to adopt Bill Gates later. Yeah.
Just with the remaining few moments we have, Carl, you've been working for not a little bit of time on helping to improve the transit system in our valley. And that's actually how I
Not
met
doing
Carl.
a very good job, am I?
Well, actually, in a few months, we're about to celebrate something. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. And that's great, because it also starts our story of how we met and became friends. It's been about a 50-year dream of this region that we would have rapid rail around the bay, and that should have been BART from the beginning. But San Mateo County and then Santa Clara County opted out of being part of that BART system. But some of us who weren't even born when that decision was initially made still envision a world-class integrated seamless transit system that we think Bay Area residents deserve. So in year 2000, Mayor of San Jose at the time, Ron Gonzalez, and the leadership group came together and said, let's change that. And we had a chance of leading a ballot initiative to fund the first 10 miles of a 16-mile extension of BART from Fremont, first 10 miles, 2 stations, Milpitas, in the North San Jose neighborhood of Berryessa. And that's where I met then private citizen Sam Liccardo. He walked into a campaign office.
Skip all that part. Let's go to the good part.
Walked into the campaign office, introduced himself, offered to volunteer, worked 80 to 100 hours a week for 4 months, along with the rest of us. We're going to change his name to Bart Liccardo, by the way. But 4 campaigns later, all successful. 2000 for the first 10 miles of Capitol, 2008 in the heart of the downturn of 08 through 010 downturn. the money to operate what we build. 2016, the local money for the final 6.1 miles. So that first 10 miles is going to open in time to open up on Christmas morning, $100 million under budget.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Gardino. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, Mayor Ricardo and Carl Gardino. That was truly inspirational. Think about the words, you have a choice of being bitter or better. You know, there are a lot of good phrases out there. That's one you can build a whole life around. Our final segment of the evening is a grand finale indeed, legendary leader. The spirit of this award is couldn't have done it without you. And please welcome our always good friend, John Walsh of Accenture, to introduce.
Thank you, Rich, and thank all of you for coming tonight. Before I start, I'd like to ask all of you to join me in thanking Karen Tucker and the Churchill Club for putting on such fantastic events as this one. Accenture is proud to be involved as we deeply resonate with the themes of these awards, as well as the broader Churchill Club Charter, which you mentioned in your opening tonight, what's new, what's next, and what's not widely known. I almost forgot it. Tonight, it is my privilege to present the Legendary Leader Award. The Legendary Leader Award is about inspirational leadership and contributions to others' innovation and success. When the Churchill Club asked its Academy to nominate honorees for this award, they asked them to identify people who not only envisioned a brand new future, but were able to also frame the industry and societal needs and create solutions in a way that is uniquely their own. Equally important is the ability to recognize and develop talent and catalyze great teams. We asked for the legendary leader who has had enormous impact on the industry he or she served and through the contributions of the people they helped along the way. This year's legendary leader is someone who has been an institution in the Valley and the broader tech industry for over 40 years. In his current role as chairman of Microsoft, he helped the company through a critically important CEO transition, as well as a major shift of Microsoft's business to the cloud. He is currently a venture partner at Lightspeed Ventures, a firm that invested in virtual instruments, or VI, where he served as CEO. Before VI, this legendary leader had an incredible 10-year run as the CEO of Symantec, where he oversaw 10x revenue growth from 600 million to 6 billion and led the company through a diverse set of strategic shifts and transactions. Prior to Symantec, he spent 28 years at IBM, where he held multiple leadership roles in sales, marketing, and software development. From the beginning of his career to today, this individual has made incredible contributions on the forefront of technology to drive innovation forward. Perhaps most important is his mentorship of the countless others and his trademark, transparent way of always pursuing the greater good. This is true leadership and someone whom I greatly admire. I always remember, and I told John this earlier, a chance interaction that I had with John about 10 years ago. I had moved to the Valley like in late 2008, so this was early 2009, and it was the first time my mom had come out to visit, first time she'd ever been to California, and we were at that little car wash on El Camino in Palo Alto. We were sitting there getting our car washed, and I'm with my mom, and I had just started doing a little bit of work with your successor at Symantec, Enrique. And I saw John sitting there, and I said, I think that's John Thompson, to my mom. So I went over and introduced myself, introduced my mom, and we had a quick chat. It was nothing spectacular, nothing special. It was really friendly. We talked about an upcoming bike trip that you had. And I always remember, and it made an impression on me, the grace and generosity that you showed during that very short conversation. And, since then, my mom has been sending me little clips as she's followed John's career. So, John, did you see John's been promoted to be the chairman of Microsoft? Oh, did you see he selected Satya Nadella to be the new CEO? So on the way over here tonight, I called my mom and I said, guess who I'm presenting the Legendary Leader Award to in Silicon Valley. And she goes, well, that must be John Thompson. It's the only tech executive she knows. And, and so it is with great pride that I am very honored to present the Legendary Leader Award tonight to John Thompson on behalf of the Churchill Club and Accenture and my mom. Joining him on stage for conversation will be Steve Lusko, former CEO of Seagate, and I'd ask you to come up to the stage.
Let's do tomorrow morning. Which one pictures you have something? Hey, GT.
How are you, man?
Good. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for hanging around.
Thank you.
And thanks to the Churchill Club for recognizing my good friend John. And John, thanks for asking me to come and speak with you for a few minutes. I am a little upset that on that bio, though, nowhere is it mentioned that John was also on the Seagate board and the one who talked me into coming back and running Seagate, but that's another story. John and I have known each other 20 years. We've been good friends. We've served on boards together. And to test his true leadership skills, he's also the godfather of our youngest, who 10 years from now is going to test all of his competencies to the greatest degree. But John and I have spoken a lot about leadership over the years. We were on the search committee together, and obviously in the context of that task, we had to think a lot about leadership. And John, let's just talk to begin a little bit about your life in the context of leaders are born or leaders are made. Tell us a little about young John Thompson. Was he a born leader or was he a to-be-made leader?
To be determined. Well, I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, and notice the emphasis was on West Palm Beach, not Palm Beach. And it was in the 1950s and 60s, and so it was a very different world than the world we live in today. My father was a Army guy, Army and Air Force, ironically enough, who after that joined the Postal Service. And he was the first African-American letter carrier in Palm Beach County. But more importantly, he was a workaholic because when he would come home from delivering mail after getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go start the day, he would then either trim the hedges, cut the yard, or in many instances, build duplexes. And he literally built from his own little money that he saved a half dozen or so little duplex apartments that he would rent to people throughout the community. And so the one thing that came from my father was this notion that hard work is what you do. You have to stay focused on executing if you want to move whatever your agenda is. And in that particular case, his agenda was all about economics for our family, quite frankly. In my mother's case, she was a school teacher. And she had a very simple view about life, which I, to this day, still subscribe to, which is life is about lifelong learning. And her notion was that you should be positioned where every day you learn something different. So that's why now, some 47 years into my career in tech, I'm in chapter 4 of my career, where I'm actually a venture capitalist, as opposed to an operator, if you will. And all of that came from, candidly, my parents, who were, in fact, the motivators and the incentives for me to go and do the best I could, whatever that was. I can remember saying to my mom, gee, I don't know that I really want to do that. And she says, yes, you do. You just haven't figured it out yet. And there were any number of occasions over the course of that period of time from 1949 to 1966, when I graduated from high school, where the two of them would share with me every day something for me to think about.
Yeah, interesting time frame. I wanted to talk about that, 49 to 66, really your formative years were a time of amazing change in America, hopes and dreams that were, I think, articulated and challenged in ways that they hadn't been, other than the massive effort of World War II. Any leaders that stand out in your mind from that time that even as a child resonated in terms of giving you hope, giving you inspiration, and thinking, wow, one day if I could be like that?
Well, obviously, the one person who will always stand out for any African American from that era would be Martin Luther King. But more importantly, my mom grew up in a little town in Beachton, Georgia. It was about 35 miles from Tallahassee, where she went to college. And ironically enough, I would go every summer and spend the summer with my great-grandmother there in Beachton, while my mother would go to graduate school at Florida A&M. And my family was a very religious family, and I met this wonderful, wonderful young minister at a church in Beachton, Georgia, who ultimately became the sidekick to guess who?
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
lo and behold, over the years, while I haven't maintained the relationship in the last 10 or 15 years, but for many, many years, from the time I met him to the time he became Martin Luther King's sidekick, we would communicate back and forth. So it was an interesting period.
Yeah, life throws these things in front of you, and a lot of it is luck. We've mentioned it a bunch tonight that you have to be open to see the luck. But what about arc of your career? Maybe just give the folks a bit of an understanding of when you entered tech. And I think we were talking before. There is this time that when you kind of later on become dinosaurs like John and I, and people call you great leaders, that you look back and you kind of think, when did that transition happen, that maybe that seemed like it was a possibility, because going into it, most of us never thought that. For you, obviously you had a stellar career at IBM, and at some point it was clear that you were something special, and IBM recognized that. When did that hit you, and how did that feel, and how did it happen?
Well, I think the first big aha moment for me happened shortly after I joined the company, where a customer who was not my customer, but I was on a call with a fellow rep, said, "Don't ever bring him back here again." And the reason he didn't want me there ever again was because of the color of my skin. And the big fear I had at that time, as I turned to the branch manager and said, "Look, I've got to feed my family based upon selling stuff to small businesses like this. And if I can't feed my family, then I don't know that I need this job." Well, I literally got accelerated in my career within days, where I went from the typical, you sell new accounts to mid-size accounts to large accounts. I went immediately to selling to large accounts. And in a very short period of time, I went from selling to large accounts to a regional staff job, which I just didn't envision. But the real moment for me was the realization that I don't fit in here. I had been there for about 5 or 6 years, and I didn't look like any other IBM in the office. And it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. It had everything to do with my two sister suits, Polly and Esther. And the fact that I just didn't believe in the culture of IBM. The blue suit, white shirt, wingtip shoes, I just did not believe in that. And one day I was sitting in the staff office on the regional staff or district staff, and I looked around, I realized, holy smokes, I don't look like anybody here. And again, it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. It had everything to do with the fact that I was misaligned culturally with where the company was, that I had not embraced who the company was and what it expected of its employees. And I thought, gee, if I'm not willing to do that, then it's time for me to leave. And I decided, okay, I better go all in. And I became a Brooks Brothers model, because that's where everybody from IBM bought all their crap at Brooks Brothers. So I got the tassel loafers and the button-down shirts and all that stuff. And before too long, I mean, my career just literally took off. It had to do with my, had everything to do with my shirts and shoes, I guess.
I started dressing like this too late, I guess. What about leadership? Different people have different words tell me how you think of leadership if you had to summarize it in, a word, a sentence. What would it be?
Well, I mean, everybody thinks of a leader as someone who has this incredible vision and view of the world and the company and what have you. And I think that's foundational for every leader. You've got to have a point of view about what you want your organization or your company to do or be. But I think the real attributes of leaders are about who they are as individuals. What's their integrity? What's their openness? What's their candor? How hard are they willing to work? How hard do they push you or me to do what we're supposed to do? That's what real leaders do. And while they have to have a vision for the organization, more importantly, they have to be about execution. They have to be about all the things that create success or the lack thereof. And oh, by the way, when they discover that there's been a lack thereof, what do we do to fix that? What do we do to modify the path that we're on such that the outcome for the company is different than it might have been had we not done anything? And so I am all about, and have been for my entire career, all about focus and execution, because that's what real leaders do. They focus on the end result and they execute maniacally until they get there.
So in the context of being chairman at Microsoft, obviously that main job is more to do with constituencies.
You don't do nothing.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, organizing board meetings, managing wild board members, things like that.
Steve used to be on the Microsoft.
But obviously in the case of Satya being a first-time CEO at arguably the largest and most important company in the world in technology, or at least one of the top three. Your role there obviously had to also become a mentor to Satya. How was that initially, and how's that evolved as he's emerged to really, I think, be one of the truly great leaders in technology in a short order of time?
Well, when I was first approached about being chairman, as you well know, I said no. I really had no interest, because it's kind of hard to think about being chairman of the board of a company called Microsoft when you got Bill in one chair and Steve in the other chair.
Not this Steve.
Not this Steve, Steve Ballmer. And so my response was no. And then they came back and asked again, and they asked again. And then I realized, we are making a big bet here with Satya, and I really don't know who the chair would be if we chose someone else, because it wasn't someone who was on the current board. And so maybe I ought to take a personal risk and do this as the chairman of the board so I can help coach Satya. And sure enough, the conversation he and I had was, look, you and I don't really know each other that well. Yes, we met each other over the last couple of years as you run the cloud business, but oh, by the way, that's not quite the relationship we need if I'm going to be chair and you're going to be CEO. So let's figure out what the path would be to build a relationship, not to build a business, but to build a relationship between the two of us. So you trust me and I trust you, and that we can operate truly as a team, guiding Microsoft into the future. And sure enough, for the first, I'd say, year or so, and I think I've said this many times, the first year or so, we would talk almost every Saturday morning for about an hour. It would run anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, depending upon what the topic was. And the topic was always his, never mine, because it was always about me doing whatever I could to coach or advise or mentor Satya, because I had spent so many years as a CEO of a company, not nearly the size of Microsoft by any stretch, but certainly a public company, when that was something that he'd never done before, which was run a public company.
Great. We've mentioned a couple of times the Business Roundtable awakening on broader constituencies. And yet it was interesting because I think every recipient of award tonight mentioned their dedication to customers. Clearly, if not directly stated, their dedication to their employees, their communities. Carl mentioned, things that David Packard and Lou Platt said 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Al Shugart built Seagate the same way. And yet somehow there's this, feeling of all of a sudden corporations have waken up to a wider aperture of understanding it's more than shareholders. And in the same time, we've had a fairly significant backlash against technology. how do you perceive the responsibilities? Do you think tech maybe is different than some of the other corporations that seem to now be including this, or do you think it's just perception? And then I have a couple follow-on questions. But first, let's start with the basic one of, do you really think anything has changed, or?
Well, many things have changed. I mean, if you think about it, we use more technology today than ever before in our lives. And it's every minute of our lives almost, because of this mobile device thing that has become so relevant. And from that has spawned many, many, many applications, and therefore it's created more and more data or content. And that content is what has become critical to every organization on the planet, regardless of whether or not you're Facebook or Google, or if you're, candidly, Lightspeed, because it's your insights from that data that will allow you to drive something different or something new. My sense is that the industry is going to go through some regulatory change. You cannot have as much data content, as much privacy issues, as many security issues without the industry being advised on how it should behave and how it should manage itself. My fear, however, is that the pendulum will swing too far to the right or left from where we are today. And that would be devastating in the face of China with 50,000 engineers produced per year per college, or out of every college. And China, I'm sorry, the US 50,000, China 1 million. So if you believe that that ratio is going to maintain for many, many years to come, boy, we're in tough shape if we do too far in terms of leaning right or left on regulatory oversight, because that's not what China's going to do, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you look at the leadership position that Microsoft has taken on really 4 significant vectors, right? I mean, there's Satya, who clearly has been vocal about this. Brad Smith, who I think is coming here next week, has been, I think, one of the real thought leaders on personal privacy. Bill, of course, in Bill's blogs, he talks about machine learning and the responsibilities of privacy, and obviously you as chairman. Is it a coordinated thing, or is it just that you have the similar mindset based on your fundamental integrity, that this message is kind of so consistent and really, I think, strikingly different from Microsoft in a really positive way?
Well, I think what is very true about Microsoft is it is an enterprise software company. It's not a consumer software company. And while we have a wonderful search business that generates great profit for the company, and we have an interesting gaming business that generates great revenue and great profit for the company, in the scheme of things, they are probably 10, 20% of the company's revenue. And therefore, the balance of it comes from large enterprises. Success with large enterprise customers from the many years I've been in this business is all about, 1, a relationship, and 2, a sense of trust and integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do things with your products that they trust or that they feel they can trust, that is not in your best interest. And I think Microsoft got lucky, quite frankly, because they did not have the degree of success that they wanted in the consumer space. And had they been in the consumer space, they might be making some of the same silly mistakes that some of the current incumbents are making today. And that would be catastrophic for the company.
One last question, John. What would be a challenge that you would leave to the audience tonight in terms of some of these things you mentioned, in terms of the impact technology is having on us, weaving in some of the things that Carl's talked about in terms of what is a community and what is a community supposed to do together to solve problems, and from the younger entrepreneurs, if I can characterize that way, just the excitement and enthusiasm. And by the way, Slack and Zoom, and I'm not excluding Peloton for any other reason, but Slack and Zoom just, to me, like life-changing products. Like, what would your challenge be to, and so is Peloton, by the way. My wife, though, wants to get rid of my bike because she wants the running machine thing. So it's like, it's a battle at home, which obviously she'll win. But what would be the one challenge you'd leave?
Well, I think all of us as leaders have to have a sense of confidence in ourselves, but it should not be visible to the rest of the world, because it looks if you're not careful, like arrogance. And unfortunately, in the tech space, that's too prominent. Too many of us have a view or have an image that is one of arrogance and obnoxiousness, not brilliance. Ironically enough, I can remember when I was in college going to my first data processing class. It's called the Introduction to Data Processing. It was from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, 2 days a week. And after about 8 or 9 weeks, I finally said, I ain't doing this anymore. This is horrible. So I dropped out. And I vowed I'd never do tech again. Never, ever. And when the opportunity came along to join IBM, a fraternity brother of mine ran outplacement services and came to me and he says, you need to go and interview with IBM. They're looking for salespeople. You should go. I went, look at me. I got an 800-pound afro. I got striped pants and two-tone shoes.
Polyester suit, apparently.
Polyester shirts. I mean, how could I ever do that? Had I not listened to him, life would be very different for my family today, for sure. And the whole idea is, even when you don't like something, maybe you just have to kind of hold your nose, suck it up, and go learn what you can learn. Because if you believe, as I do, in what my mom said, which is life is about lifelong learning, then learning about data processing at that point in my life was critical to the rest of my life. What I didn't understand, quite frankly, was it was going to be as impactful over time as it has become.
Great.
No question.
Yeah, the humility is interesting. I remember Shugart was good friends with Charles Schultz, and you know, who was obviously the creator of Snoopy Peanuts, but he's also a great satirist. And one of his great cartoons that Al had framed in his office was of Snoopy sitting up on his doghouse, and it said, "It's hard to be humble when you're great." Anyway, so John, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wow, what a high note on so many levels. Such a well done, well handled interview, Steve and John. You really graced us and inspired us with your presence tonight, leaving us all on a high and inspired note. And so I want to leave you in the thread that runs through this evening tonight about not only effective leadership, but an added level of moral and ethical leadership as being the kind of leadership that we want to embrace if we want to preserve this wonderful environment that we have here in Silicon Valley and not have it be the point of anger for so many seemingly today. You know, we really have to all rise to the occasion and rise to our better angels. And what a great set of award winners tonight who inspired us to do that. And so I leave you with a parting thought. This one from the late Steve Jobs, given during his 2005 Stanford commencement speech. Many of you are familiar with that. It's only been downloaded about 90 million times. But just a couple of paragraphs. Quote, "For the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no, for too many days in a row, I know things need to change. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. There is no reason not to follow your heart." Thank you and good night.